Cool, yeah. So hi everyone, my name's Andy Phillips. I'm the CTO of Glide. We're a sustainable London-based kind of tech startup, so no kind of surprise there. My background is very much in the kind of boring corporate IT world. I've worked for companies like Oracle, companies like ServiceNow. You probably would have heard of Oracle then, more likely. And I guess one thing that's easy to note in my career is that kind of when you're looking at really big systems, that the ones that tend to be successful are the ones that are underpinned by decent data, basically. I know the kind of topic today is around kind of the Internet of Things. And I guess a big part of that is going to be when you've got lots and lots of interconnected devices, it's going to be basically bringing in data, right? So I thought I'd kind of diverge a little bit and talk a little bit just around data generally and how it applies to sustainable kind of business in different ways that it doesn't to kind of a conventional business. So I'll quickly introduce Glide. So basically we are offering an alternative to taxis and minicabs in London in the form of a completely electric chauffeur-driven car service. So we use the Tesla Model S, which I'm sure some of you will be familiar with, which is it's an electric car. It's a badass car, and if anyone's ridden in one, your mind's already been blown. It's like going into the future, and so we wanted to build a kind of service to match that. So basically, the problem that we're trying to solve is the industry we're coming into is worth $3 billion a year and it's continuing to grow, and there's no sustainable options in it. And also, there's no more direct kind of association with sustainability. You go outside, the road in central London are just covered with cars. I mean, the 50 worst spots in the United Kingdom for air quality are in central London, and 40% of the emissions come from just taxis and private hire cars. So that's kind of the problem that we're trying to solve. And we're also trying to kind of modernise the roads, get electric vehicles out there, and redefine what a sustainable service can be, which is kind of what I want to talk about a little bit as well, because there's an association that I have with sustainable products and services today, and I think kind of data is going to be the way forward, and it's going to be what backs it up. So in true startup fashion, this is kind of a bit of an improvised talk. The slides are going to be hilariously poor for your amusement. And I mean, hopefully we'll get some kind of insight into it, because I mean, in the startup world, everything is uncertain. We've learned a lot already, and we've learned that kind of data is a lot more paramount than we realise. So we're going to kind of share that story with you today. So when I think of sustainable businesses today, I think of basically labels. You're told basically you're given a thumbs up. Good for you. You did the right thing. You bought something that is 100% whatever. So you pay more. You feel good about yourself. But actually what's going on is kind of behind a curtain, and the main aim of this seems to be customer satisfaction rather than potentially actually doing good, because you don't know what the prerequisites are really for this label being on a particular product, right? So when you think of free range, for example, you conjure up a mental image like this, and I'm a complete sucker for stuff like this. When I see like a rustic wooden barrel on a product, I think it's made in a cottage somewhere, not in a factory of people in hairnets. So I'm a complete sucker for it. And you think of free range, you think of this. The reality is more like that. So what's missing is kind of information, right? If you had that on the box, there'd be a gap in the market, because consumers would be saying, well, I want that. So when can I have that? And because they're both summarised with the same kind of like thumbs up, tick in the box, you don't know any different. So I believe that kind of technicalities and labels like this will be superseded by products which can actually use data, validate their claims. So there's a disconnect between companies that provide services and products and customers and what they actually want. In the industry we're in, we're looking more at businesses, because businesses want to reduce their environmental impact. But service providers, if you're buying into a service which has an environmental impact, they're not going to tell you what it is. When you buy a car, they're not going to tell you what the CO2 emissions were for building that car. So basically, we already have an advantage in a way, because at least we can provide that data, because we're honest about it. We've got nothing to hide, right? So I think that's kind of my first point really about data and sustainability. Is kind of we've already got the advantage, because we can actually tell companies what we're doing. This is the best slide in the world, right? If I had a reputation, I would throw it behind this slide, because this is my prediction of the future, which is basically that sustainable products and service kind of companies will start to amalgamate their data together, and that's going to paint for the first time a picture of kind of progress. So as soon as we start to amalgamate data, we're going to start to get an idea of topics like emissions, pollution, fair trade, whatever. If we put that data together, then customers will be drawn in to see where else they can reduce their impact, right? So if anyone here is looking for an idea for their next startup, build that and send me a check if it takes off. So you can't talk about big data without having a stock image. So I've picked a guy looking at a blackboard of gibberish, pondering his decision as a stock model, I guess. So in terms like big data, on-demand, cloud, we associate those with all the kind of apps and modern services that we've kind of grown to depend on. But I still think that data really is the missing piece of the puzzle, especially with sustainability. And we're really only just scratching the surface of what's possible with data. And I'm going to illustrate some of the things that we've been able to do with data, which we weren't even expecting ourselves. So I'll talk a bit about that now. So I'll just quickly say that for data to actually be useful, it actually has to correspond with reality. And to do that, it has to be these three things. So when we talk about the Internet of Things, it's great because for our data to be reliable, it's really cool if you've got data coming from sensors and from user behavior and that sort of thing, rather than kind of surveys and stuff that could be prone to error. Data should also be meaningful so that you can actually draw a conclusion about the world that we live in from it. And obviously you want a large sample size so that you can be confident in that assertion. So when you actually start to look at data, it sucks basically. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember like 5-10 years ago, like Dragon's Den, people were inventing like cucumber caps and just stupid stuff. They were just looking for problems to solve. But now that sustainability is being taken more seriously, as an entrepreneur, you don't need to look very far to find a problem to solve now. You only need to look at how crap we are with the environment in terms of numbers, and there's so much more to do. So in our industry, there's 23,000 black cabs, for example, in London. If we do some back of the napkin kind of maths, that translates into over 3,000 tonnes of CO2 per week emitted just in central London. And that's only taxis, that's not minicabs, that's not buses. So it just gives you an idea of just how much there is to do, basically. And how little there is in the way of like electric vehicles at the moment on the road. So our sources of data include our mobile apps, held by a severed hand there, an online booking portal, and our fleet of cars. So we've actually integrated with our cars, and we actually know the battery state of the car, we know whether it's charging or not, we know the telemetry, we know how it's being driven, and we suck up all that data into our database, and we've started looking at, well, how can we innovate? How can we use this data to do really awesome things that aren't being done currently? And I'll just talk through some of those now. So how we use data. So one of the big reasons why there aren't loads of electric cars on the road, it's not that easy. There are actually hurdles. And one of the biggest hurdles to the adoption of electric cars is range anxiety, which is the idea that you can't simply pull into a petrol station and fill it full of diesel and then carry on. So if a driver does a really long working day, and at the end of that day somebody wants to do a long distance trip, how do we know the car's going to be able to fulfill that trip? So this is a problem that currently is completely unresolved. Because we've got the data, we know the battery state of the car, we've got an automatic check in place so that any booking that comes through, we know whether the nearest car can fulfill that journey or not, and if it can't, we'll send the next one. So essentially one of the biggest barriers to the adoption of electric cars could be solved with data. So already we've talked about this kind of idea of labels and stuff. Data is going to help us basically operate the business better, but it's also going to help us sell it easier as well. So we'll talk about that now. So the next one we've got is, I've got energy traceability up here. So as well as the data sources I talked about, we've also got research. So we're also looking at charging points in London and cataloguing where they are. And eventually we're going to be looking into the energy mix that powers those chargers. Because we also know when our vehicles are charging and where they are when they're charging, we know which charger they've used, right? So we can eventually create a full traceability model and actually paint a full end-to-end picture of how energy was generated, how it was then provided to our cars through charging points, and then how it was used to transport people in London. So that's the kind of data that I'm talking about. We're also looking at strategic vehicle placement. Because we're aiming quite heavily at business, businesses tend to be quite repetitive in the working day and each week of how they operate. So we can actually start to preempt, this is something we're looking to do, is to preempt demand basically and have cars in the right place at the right time so that we can reduce wait times. We've got obviously reporting as well, so our customers are going to want to know when they're using us how much CO2 am I actually offsetting, how much of a difference am I actually making by using this service versus something like maybe Addison Lee or Uber, for example. That's the kind of information that we can provide. We're also looking at setting up services for partners to reward sustainable behaviour. So I can't go into too much detail about this because it's quite early days yet, but there are actually organisations out there that are looking to reward sustainable behaviour to their user base, and that's something that, with our user permission, sharing the data that we can do. So basically, in summary, our service is transportation. That is what people are paying us for, to pick them up and take them somewhere. But our product is data. That is our USP. That is what we are taking to people and basically using to sell our products. So so as I've said, so we're using data to improve the way we operate, getting rid of range anxiety, to actually sell our product and to innovate new features that haven't been seen before. Thank you very much. And if you're interested, you can check out more information about us at glide.co.
Brilliant.
So you understand my rather weak joke, which is the excuse for having him along, was it's Internet of Teslas rather than Internet of Things. But it still applies. It's exactly the same sort of stuff. Now, any questions? All right, you first.
This sounds really exciting. How are you going to compete with people like Uber and Halo, apart from just going for the market of people who want to do an environmental thing?
Yeah, well,
how are you going to compete with Uber and Halo who don't care about the environment? I mean, for whom it's
no,
not.
they don't care about the environment.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a twofold thing. So we find that although there are a lot of consumers out there who A, want to make more sustainable choices, and B, want to ride in a Tesla because it's awesome, most of our customers that want to reduce their environmental impact are businesses. And Halo and Uber at the moment are not business oriented. They offer a consumer app which you can use to book. We offer the same, but we also offer a series of online features aimed at businesses. So the ability to book using an online portal, to be able to invite employees to use the service and expense their travel, to be able to report on their expenditure online and export receipts and all of that kind of great stuff that isn't currently on the market as well. So for businesses, it's going to be a case of, at the moment, companies like Addison Lee kind of dominate the corporate side of this industry in London. And compared to a service like that, we're offering high-tech booking options, sustainability, and competitive price as well. So we're against this idea that just because something's green, it has to be expensive. We're trying to get away from that. We don't have an expenditure on fuel. We have great incentives around the cars. We pass that on to our clients. So basically, it becomes a bit of a no-brainer for businesses, that is.
There you go. Great. Another question now. Who has not asked one yet? Right, you at the back. Sorry.
Will the company own the cars, or the drivers, or a combination?
Well, we're a platform, so it will be the drivers, but we're looking at setting up deals in which we can leverage the incentives around the vehicles to provide better deals to help drivers come onto the platform and adopt the cars quicker.
So that was who owns the cars? Is it Glide or is it the drivers? And it's
neither. The drivers will be basically renting them from a financier, basically, that we're going to set up agreements with. Yeah.
Super. Next question. Right, here we go. From the front, John.
Why did you choose the awesome Tesla rather than the awesome Nissan Leaf?
So the Tesla at the moment is the only car that basically meets the needs, which is basically that it's got as much storage as a BMW 5 Series. It seats 5 people. We can go after the kind of executive market with it as well. The Nissan Leaf, also the range, range hasn't really been a big issue for us, but because this has kind of been a bit of an experiment, the Tesla has so much more range. Just so you all know, a Tesla can do up to about 250 miles on a charge. Nissan Leaf can do about 80. So because this is kind of new territory, we wanted to be absolutely sure. But in the future, there's no reason why we wouldn't expand out and include Nissan Leafs.
The question was really from an investor perspective. I was thinking actually you're focusing on quite a small market here, and I'm surprised that you actually selected that one rather than a bigger market, which I thought would be more.
How is it a smaller market? It's not an unaffordable service. Now I know it seems like a posh executive car. But if it comes in we come in at like 50% the cost of a black cab, so it doesn't need to be, to be seen as an expensive executive kind of type thing. So the market is actually huge, but we can definitely increase it further by offering an even cheaper model using something like the Leaf in future. Definitely by leveraging the integration we talked about. If we can do that with the Leaf as well, then we can offset the fact that it only does 80 miles by knowing the range of the car that's going to be assigned to any given job.
Okay. Anyone else who's not asked one yet? No? So, all right. Sorry, you haven't asked one, have you?
So, including aircraft is great, but what about the number of cars? Do you still one person per car in your service, or do you try and use the data you've got to increase the occupancy?
So this is just asking, is Glide still picking up one person per car, or do they combine journeys to reduce the pollution?
It's definitely something we'll be looking at doing in the long term, but at the moment, the model is fairly simple at the moment. But one of the things we're looking to do longer term is to move towards more kind of renewable sources that we use to charge the vehicles in the first place. So it's not a case of really using more, there wouldn't be more emissions associated with more journeys necessarily anyway. However, obviously efficiency is the key, right? So that would definitely be something long term we'd be looking to do as well. especially on the consumer side where people want cheaper rides and are willing to, to ride share.
Joe first, and then we'll do Paul.
Okay, so just to sort of clarify an answer you gave there. So
Yeah.
half the price of a black cab,
Yeah.
you reckon you should be right. So you could get me back to Guildford tonight for about 50, 60 quid.
Ask my CEO over there, Mark, will you?
Just checking.
It's up to 50%. It depends. The longer the journey, the more it tends to cost. It's within central London, which is where we focus
Right.
at the moment. It's up to 50% cheaper.
So if you move into central London, you'll get a bargain, all right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Just speak to me at the end when we do the deal.
Oh, there you go. I like this. We are the deal maker right now. Paul, quickly, and then there's another one there.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the two cars both can be integrated.
Yes, yeah.
And so is there also an issue about recharge time in this marketplace? Because unless you can recharge it pretty quickly, it must be quite difficult to operate.
Well, actually, there's a couple of points there. One is that the peak times in the day tend to be sort of the morning and then again in the evening. So there is a time in between to charge anyway. But actually, the range of the Tesla actually covers the average amount of miles that a driver would do in any given day. So at the moment, recharging during a shift is not really a big issue for us.
If you have 250 miles.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I guess as a last resort, Tesla provide their own super high-powered charging network, and that can charge like 200 miles in about sort of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's really not an issue
With
for us.
electricity, isn't it?
You'll make your lights dim. Whoever it is. Is it electricity you do that?
We do actually have a partnership with Ecotricity, and long term we're looking to move over to them. Yeah.
And sorry, your question.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Actually, I think it's a very interesting business model. But why do you compare this with black cats? I think they're very, very different markets for a couple of things. One is black cat is very iconic, and also the way people use that in London is very, very different, right? It's popping, pop off. They have this amazing knowledge of the roads, how we beat the traffic, how we beat the crowd. A lot of times people, more than one person is the cat. So I would have thought the dynamic.
No, I absolutely agree.
So I'm just going to check. So the basic question was, why compare against a black cab, which has a whole bunch of things like being iconic and the knowledge and all of this sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. There's always going to be a place for black cabs in London, as you said, the iconic kind of ambassador to London, I guess they see themselves as. I don't know if everyone else sees them as that. But, and I suppose in the future as well, it's only a matter of time before an electric vehicle becomes available to them as well. So that's a fair point. Actually, the most apt competitor I can think of will probably be someone like Addison Lee, like I mentioned before, a private hire operator in London with an archaic business model with kind of outdated cars, with a dominance over the kind of business B2C side, B2B side of the market.
Super. All right, one more, and then we really must stop.
You mentioned that your company is a platform, very much like Uber is a platform. Now, my understanding about Uber is that, well, basically they say they're not a transport company, and that's how they escape having to be regulated in the way that, say, traditional transport companies are, which has all these kind of effects related with the kind of downside of the sharing economy.
Yeah, sure.
Could you talk a little bit more about how this works for you in the UK and how regulation affects you, please?
Basically, we operate like a standard private hire car company. We don't operate quite in the same way as Uber. The other thing that differentiates us from us in terms of the platform as well is that for Uber, any driver, anybody with a car is able to sign up and join the platform. That is never how we will operate. We will always take on and vet drivers to make sure that we're providing the best service. So as I say, it's almost like a hybrid between, right? So if you look at Addison Lee, the way they operate as a private hire cab company, we're doing that kind of operation, but we're mixing it up with kind of Uber's technology, basically, that kind of technology platform. Except as I say, ours includes the integration with the cars, the online booking, and the kind of business features as well that we provide.
Thank you.
Thank you very